To support this Wild World podcast, please check out Autio. It's an app that gives you amazing stories told by some of the world's best storytellers, such as John Lithgow, Phil Jackson, and Kevin Costner, and it's uniquely curated based on your location. It's a perfect audio travel companion for any road trip or just learning more about a trip you want to take. Click on the link in our show notes for more information.
Volcanoes are some of the most awe-inspiring, terrifying, and fascinating natural wonders on our planet. Volcanic eruptions can be dangerous for people living nearby. But volcanoes can also provide benefits to surrounding communities by providing fertile soil, valuable minerals, and geothermal energy. Still, living near an active volcano can be nerve-wracking. In order to better understand how volcanoes work, and to be able to improve our forecasts for when an eruption might happen, we need to learn more about them. And the best way to do that is to study them up close. Real close.
I'm the level of tactile that when I'm walking around art museums, I sometimes get yelled at for getting too close to the paintings. Because they're like, ma'am, this is worth $100 million. Please do not breathe on it. So that's why I fell in love with geology.
Woo! This is Wild World. I'm Scott Solomon. In this episode, we're learning what it's like to climb inside an active volcano. You know, for science. There are more than 1,500 active volcanoes on Earth. But rather than being spread evenly across the planet, they tend to be clustered in particular locations. There's the Ring of Fire, which forms an arc that runs along the edge of the Pacific Ocean, including the west coasts of North and South America and the east coast of Asia, through the islands of Indonesia and all the way down south to New Zealand. Another cluster of active volcanoes occurs in East Africa, in what's known as the Great Rift Valley. The Great Rift Valley runs through the continent of Africa from Ethiopia in the north to Mozambique in the south. What the Great Rift Valley and the Pacific Ring of Fire have in common is that they are both places where the boundaries between the Earth's tectonic plates meet. In some places, like the Andes of South America, the plates are moving toward one another, causing one plate to be forced below the other, which leads to the formation of tall mountains as the plates buckle and fold. But in East Africa, the plates are moving away from one another. In the gap that forms between them, depressions are created that form large valleys or lakes as water accumulates. But in a few spots, the separation of these massive plates creates an opening where magma from deeper in the earth can make its way up to the surface. Where that happens, you get a volcano. My guest is a geoscientist who has studied volcanoes all over the world. Dr. Kayla Iacovino is a senior research scientist at NASA's Johnson Space Center. She has a bachelor's degree from Arizona State University and a PhD from Cambridge. For her dissertation research, she conducted fieldwork on Mount Erebus in Antarctica, the southernmost active volcano in the world. She's also done fieldwork in Costa Rica, Chile, Italy, North Korea, and Central Africa. Her work has been featured on numerous documentaries, including for PBS and the BBC. In fact, the BBC documented her work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The DR Congo, or DRC, is the second largest country in Africa. Formerly known as Zaire, it's located right in the center of the continent. The mighty Congo River flows through it, surrounded by the world's second largest rainforest. The eastern edge of the country, near the border with Uganda and Rwanda, has rugged mountains. This is where the country's two active volcanoes are located, Nyiragongo and Nyamulagira. In 2002, an eruption of Nyiragongo devastated the nearby city of Goma. Kayla Iacovino was part of the research team that visited these mountains along with the BBC film crew. I watched that documentary, and my jaw was on the floor when I saw how Kayla and her team literally rappelled down into the crater of Mount Nyiragongo, at the bottom of which was a massive pool of lava. It's just incredible. And today, She's here to tell us all about it. Kayla Iacovino, welcome to Wild World.
Yeah, happy to be here.
You've done some incredible work all over the world, but your research in Central Africa seems particularly interesting. What was it that drew you to this part of the world?
Yeah, Central Africa is a fascinating place for so many reasons. It is a place where Africa is sort of splitting in two. So I think a lot of us are familiar with mid-ocean ridges where we have oceanic plates splitting apart and giving us, new land on the surface of the earth. And it's thought that Central Africa, there is a rift that runs from sort of northish to southish, and it's sort of splitting off the northeastern part of Africa. So in theory, if we're correct, in some number of millions of years, there will be an ocean there that splits Africa into two different continents. And so when that's happening, the crust there, which is, the layer, we have the crust, we have the mantle underneath, and then the core of the earth. And so the crust, as it's being pulled apart, is thinning. So you can think of like pulling a piece of taffy apart, and it gets thin in the center.
Yeah.
And to fill in that space, the hot mantle does what we call upwelling. So it starts to move up into that space, and there it's able to melt and shoot off little pieces of it. Some of it will melt and then sit in the Earth's crust or come up out of the top as extrusive volcanism, or when we have magma that's actually coming out of the surface of the Earth. And so there's a ton of these all up and down that rift zone and on the sides of the rift zone. And that whole system has a lot of consequences for the geology there.
Yeah, we actually did a podcast episode about the Great Rift Valley in the context of paleoanthropology and the study of human origins.
Australopithecus comes from that area.
Exactly, right? So, and this is all connected, right? So all of that active geology has exposed some of these earlier layers, right? So, but you're studying the places where that is very actively happening, and we're talking about volcanoes here. So, in addition to having a lot of volcanoes, are there certain aspects of those volcanoes that make them special?
Yeah, a lot of them. For one thing, the chemistry of them is relatively unique. It's not a magma or lava like we'd see in Hawaii. It's not a lava like we'd see from something like Mount St. Helens. It's it's low in an element called silicon. And that's one of the things that gives magma its structure. So the more silicon you have silicon bonded to oxygen, bonded to all these other things, and it makes the magma more rigid, or it has a higher viscosity. So think of like honey is a viscous thing, and water would be a low viscosity thing. So these magmas that come up in that rift zone are very, very low viscosity, which means they move very, very quickly. And there's a lot of population centers around some of these volcanoes. So they pose very, very high risk. Not only are they very active, they're erupting a lot, they have the capability to move quickly into these areas, and they're next to these populated zones. So the potential for a lot of damage. They're also, because there's so much heat coming up out of the mantle where that crust is thin, they can sustain lava lakes. So most people think that you walk up to the crater rim of any volcano and you look down and you see the magma churning and bubbling away.
Yeah.
That's very rare. Most people are kind of disappointed when I tell them that when you're looking down into the crater of a volcano, it kind of looks like a smoking pile of rocks.
Yeah.
But there's a few places on the Earth, Hawaii is one of them, where you have these lava lakes, and only a few of those are what we call persistently active. So Hawaii, we've seen crusted over. The lava lake, there's a couple of lava lakes in the African Rift, and there's one in Antarctica, there's one in Vanuatu, which is in the South Pacific. There's a handful of these, only a few, you can count them on one, maybe two hands, that as long as we've known they've existed, they have these active lava lakes. So that's a really unique opportunity to study them, because we can see the lava directly with our eyes, with our instruments, rather than them being so cloistered away underground.
I mean, just the idea of a lava lake sounds like a totally crazy thing. So give us a visual. Like you're standing on the edge of a crater and looking down, and you've done this, right? And
yes.
So what do you see? What does it look like? Paint us a picture.
In the DR Congo, where I did some work, it's, I think, particularly awe-inspiring. because it's massive. So the lava lake there is something like more than 300 meters across.
That's huge.
We're talking about like 3 football fields,
Yeah.
to put it in American parlance.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's far away from you, but it's not that far. And it's one of the few lava lakes where you can actually sometimes feel the heat from the crater rim.
It's got to be a lot of heat.
It's a lot of heat. And it's huge. It's a huge surface area. It's very hot lava. And some people will go into the crater sometimes for reasons that make sense and sometimes for reasons that are just to be flashy. And frankly, going up to the edge of the lava lake and sticking a probe in that lava lake does not have scientific value.
Yeah, that sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, given the risk. And that there's sort of nested craters. So you come up to the crater and it's a steep hike up, takes several hours to hike up, and you get there and you're kind of tired, and the crater rim kind of comes into view and you start to peer over it, and it's just like, jaw-dropping.
Wow.
It's hard to describe. It feels very alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine. And I've seen the documentary that you did with BBC about this expedition. So I'm trying to picture it in my mind now. I still can't imagine what it was like to actually stand on the rim and look down. And just to make sure we've got all the info here. So this is Nyiragongo. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Nyiragongo.
Okay.
It's like NYI, so Nyiragongo.
Yes.
And then there's a second sort of sister volcano called Nyamulagira that's maybe connected underground to Nyiragongo. We're not sure. But it has a sometimes active lava lake as well.
Now, you actually did climb down or rappel down into that crater as part of your research expedition, which was captured in this documentary I mentioned. Walk me through that. Like, what is okay? You're on you've gone to the edge. You've peered down into this huge, unbelievable crater with an active lava lake in the bottom of it, and now you're going to go down into it. What's going through your mind?
Well, I'm not like terrified of heights, but I'm not great with heights. Like, I won't go onto a balcony that's very high up unless I'm crawling on the floor.
Okay.
So yeah, afraid of heights,
yeah.
you could say.
A little bit.
And they had this like winch system where it was this big metal frame thing that sat at the top of the rim, and then you would hook into it with this harness and it would lower you down. And then once you got your footing, then you would use a rope and belay, all the way, rappel all the way down.
Yeah.
And that was just looking at it, watching other people go down was terrifying.
Yeah.
One of our producers, who was more afraid of heights than me, they were teasing him because everyone knew he was not looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Once he did it, he was like, this is amazing to have this experience, but he hated it, every minute of it. I actually ended up not going in as all the way down with some of the other expedition members, which was both disappointing and very relieving. I'm not going to lie.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, being afraid of heights is bad enough as it is if you're rappelling anywhere. But you're not just rappelling anywhere. You're rappelling into an active volcano, right? I mean, like, it's just next level.
It's monitored, but it's in Central Africa, so they don't have a lot of resources for anything, let alone science. The fact that they have a volcano observatory there. So there's a city right at the base of the volcano. It's called Goma. It's home to about 1 million people, which I think a lot of people don't realize that there are cities that large in the Congo, and it's not the only one. And so, there's this massive city down there, and there's a lot of reasons that it's difficult for people to live there, and they still have the Goma Volcano Observatory, setting up seismometers when they can. And these people are so passionate about understanding the volcano, and they've seen it destroy parts of their city before.
Yeah.
So they're very driven.
Yeah, so this research that you were doing, as I understand it, part of what you were trying to understand in the data that you were collecting was like, can we help to better predict when eruptions are going to happen and like what the outcome of those eruptions might be in part for the local community, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I will throw a caveat in there that predicting volcanic eruptions, I mean, in the field, a lot of people will say forecasting instead, because we cannot predict volcanic eruptions. Maybe one day, but it's challenging not only because there's actually quite a bit about volcanoes that we don't understand. How does a volcano erupt? Well, it depends / we don't quite know. Why is there heat right under the volcano in this one place? You could go down. Why did the volcano erupt? Well, because this thing happened in the magma chamber. Well, why did that thing happen in the magma chamber? Well, because there was heat coming from below, and then this happened. Well, why was there heat coming below, and why did this thing happen? And you get to the point you have fewer and fewer answers as you go down. And the other challenge is that every volcano is different. So some volcanoes will give a lot of signals of unrest. You'll see a lot of seismic activity, small earthquakes right along where we think the magma chamber is and moving up towards the surface. Sometimes the gas chemistry will change. And some places give no signs at all. So there was a handful of years ago a volcano in Japan, and those volcanoes are some of the best instrumented on Earth. The Japanese are very dedicated, a lot of technical skills, and a lot of resources, and all of Japan is volcanoes. And we know a lot of those volcanoes, and there were some volcanologists there that died in a pyroclastic flow because there was literally no warning.
Wow.
Not even minutes.
Yeah.
So, that's a long-winded way of saying we do what we can. And, one of the things that we do as geologists is, we like to say the past is the key to the present. Mm-hmm. And so understanding what the rocks look like, you can look into the crater and see these layers going down, and those are all eruptions. Lava has gone over the side and then hardened and built up, and then the next one and the next one. So you get these layers, and you can look back in time as you go down through the layers. And one of the things, for example, that we found in the field, just looking at the samples under, a loop or a hand lens.
Like a magnifying glass.
Yeah, like a magnifying glass, is the kinds of crystals that were in it gave us a hint as to the chemistry of the rock as a whole. Mm-hmm. And we were able to say that this lava, the more recent lavas, are looking like they would be a lower viscosity than some of them in the past. So this trend towards a lower viscosity would mean faster moving lavas, which would mean higher risk.
Yeah, that's not great news for the people of Goma, right? Because that means the lava is going to show up, faster than before. And they've had some pretty catastrophic eruptions in the past, right? I think, was it in 2002 they had a pretty major eruption that caused a lot of damage and deaths in Goma. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fewer resources you have, full stop, then of course the fewer resources you have to respond to a disaster like that or support people that have been through it or even evacuate people.
Yeah. So was that kind of thing, like the fact that your work is having this direct effect on these local communities, do you sort of reflect on that while you're in the field? You're in this kind of wild, very dangerous place. Is that a part of your motivation then to think about how to help folks like that? Absolutely.
I mean, personally, that's and I've come to realize this more and more throughout my career, that's the number one motivation for me. I'm passionate about research and the science, and I'm fascinated by geology. And the older I get and the more I look at even fields outside of my own that maybe I didn't even care much for when I was in school, I realize how much geology touches our lives pretty directly. And it's a double-edged sword, though, when you're in the field, especially as a white person and someone from the West. You go into there's a very, very big danger of having some kind of imperialist sense.
Yeah.
Where you come in as the outsider, you're telling these people, how to do things right. They're not doing it the right way. You're taking samples, taking them back to your university in the US and England, analyzing them, and then there might not be return for those people.
Yeah.
Because not only is it very easy to publish science that doesn't translate into something useful for them, but there's a history of scientists going to these places, taking stuff from there and packing up their toys and going home and not communicating that conversation with the local people.
Right. So how do you try to avoid that? Are you, you're working in part with, local scientists and folks from those communities?
Yeah. I mean, it's something I think a lot of us luckily are becoming more and more conscious of. I think the number one thing is to work directly with the local scientists. And not only is that a thing of, you're trying to be careful, but it demonstrably makes your science better. They imagine where you grew up. You probably know your neighborhood pretty well.
Sure.
So if someone from, another country was coming and they wanted to study your neighborhood, you're like, oh, I know. You're looking for this. Oh, I know this house over here is exactly what you need, and you maybe wouldn't have found that on your own. Or
right.
Or hey, I know this guy. This happens in Costa Rica a lot. I work in Costa Rica a lot, and a lot of it's populated. And so a lot of the best deposits are on like farms or behind a bar or something. And there's this one guy, his name's Carlos. He's like super well known in the field and in Costa Rica. And he seems to know everyone in the country. So you'll say, oh, I'm looking for this. Oh, I know a guy. Yeah, Pedro has a bar. We can grab a beer and then he'll show us where this is.
Yeah. And when you never would have found that on your own, most likely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's value added all around, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about Kayla's encounters with mountain gorillas and what their connection is to Central Africa's volcanoes. Hi, I'm Scott Solomon. As a scientist and world traveler, I spend a lot of time on the road. And I wanted to share with you an app that can make that time more exciting, educational, and more interactive than your typical audiobook or podcast. Except for this one, of course. It's called Autio. That's Autio. And what it does is it uses GPS to follow your location, and then it gives you audio stories about the places that you're driving by. These stories are told by some of the best storytellers out there, like John Lithgow, Phil Jackson, Kevin Costner, and many others. The stories are short, usually about 3 to 5 minutes long, and they play for you as you drive. Or, if you prefer, you can plan a road trip and then find stories about those places to inspire you before you leave. And Autio's library of stories celebrate every voice and perspective. Rooted in curiosity, the storytelling embraces the diversity of cultures, people, and places that you discover along your travels, just like we do here on Wild World. Stories are updated and added every week, so no two journeys are ever the same. Now you can check out the Autio app through a link on our website, wildworldshow.com, or in the podcast show notes. And by doing so, you'll also help our podcast to continue to bring you explorations of the natural wonders of the world and the voices of the people who explore, study, and protect them. This is Wild World. I'm Scott Solomon, and I'm speaking with volcanologist Kayla Iacovino about her work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
So thinking back about Nyiragongo, like how much time did you actually spend in the crater? Because I think you actually even camped inside. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how long were we there? I was there less time than some of the rest of the crew who spent more time in the crater. I feel like they were down there for maybe a week.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time.
I was up there for the better part of a week, I think. Yeah. And then we traveled to other places around the region to look at some other smaller craters, and we even got a chance to go and see the mountain gorillas.
Oh my gosh.
Famous silverback gorillas in the wild.
Yeah, I also have been very lucky to get to see the mountain gorillas. So just over the border in Uganda, which shares a border with the DRC, and for me and my wife, that got to have this experience. I mean, it was like a spiritual experience. I would say it was incredible. What was it like for you? Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely magical, and it was. I want to say it was 2 adults and a bunch of babies.
Yeah.
And they were super chill.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's because, this was a known family.
Right.
And
they were habituated to become used to humans.
Yeah. And they were used to the park rangers being around them. But they weren't, they were in the wild. And so they thought, they should be over in this area now. And they were just like, it was like we're almost like having a connection, like looking at each other and just observing each other and watching the babies jump all over the parents. And I'm like, these are like little human kids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. They are so human-like.
It's kind of Yeah, it gets to the point where it's like uncanny valley for me, honestly, at some point. So that is too human.
Yeah. It makes you ask some uncomfortable questions.
Yeah, they start using tools, and I'm like,
That's right. What are they thinking about me? But there's also a connection back to the volcanoes, right? Because as I understand it, there's very specific habitat requirements for these mountain gorillas. And a lot of that habitat comes from what those volcanoes create, right?
Absolutely. And that's one thing I always try to impart on people when I'm telling them about volcanoes, and DR Congo is a great example, that the volcano is thought of typically as a very destructive force, but it's also a very, very rich creative force. It creates very fertile soil to grow crops,
right?
To grow, the types of forests that these creatures live in, mineral springs, geothermal energy, and then you get every one bit of these pieces of a two-edged sword, and perhaps the more obvious two-edged sword is ore deposits.
Oh yeah, precious metals.
Yeah, precious metals, lithium, all the things that go into your cell phone. A lot of those are conflict minerals.
Meaning that they're coming from areas that are having some sort of an active conflict.
Yeah, and the way that they're mined. So, these are the people, think about the Congolese who live there. They are experiencing all of the dangers of the volcano and some of the benefits, but a lot of those are taken away from them. So again, this imperialist idea, people from wealthy countries come in, buy a claim. They often work with the government to exchange money so that they can get a claim to mine it. They employ the local people and pay them terrible wages and don't provide them with, the safety requirements that they would have if they were in the United States or England or Asia or a lot of other places. And so they're working these horrible conditions, not, barely scraping by, but they do it because they need to feed their families.
Yeah.
And then the mineral wealth is taken out of the country, and they're not even prospering from that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the positive aspect, if there is one, of being that close to a volcano, is having those resources, but they don't get to enjoy that.
Exactly. So they suffer the negative consequences. The people that come in don't, and just take the positive things from the volcano and leave.
Yeah. Yeah. So while you were there in Nyiragongo, what was your data collection protocol like? Walk me through, when you're doing science, what does that look like inside a volcano?
Yeah. Well, there were two things that I wanted to do, which one was collect samples, the rock samples to bring back, and the other was to measure the gases that were coming out of the volcano. And so I had what we lovingly call a gas box, which is, scientific, researchers, especially at universities, are just kind of kludging things together. You get a box,
we
you
do
get
what we
some
can.
tubes.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For cheap, and because we're not experts at building things, but it works. So it's called the gas box, and it has a couple of sensors inside of it that you can pass the volcanic gases over it, and it'll measure things like CO2, sometimes H2O, SO2, so sulfur dioxide, which is really important for understanding volcanism, and hydrogen sulfide. So those, probably through the carbon, the sulfur, and the hydrogen, like H2O, are really important for understanding what a volcano is doing beneath the surface. And so it was deploying this box and a little tube and a little pump, and letting the pump run for a while and watching the data come back. And then the other was collecting rock samples. And so that is a lot of walking around and figuring out where there are good samples to select. So a lot of times you can't get a visual on a place from satellite imagery or even photographs that really give you enough information about which samples you want. So depends on, like any field science, it depends on the question you're asking, what kind of samples you want. And it depends on, how fine your tuning you are doing, sort of reading these layers. Do you want one from every layer? Do you want just a couple that you feel are representative? So I'm using air quotes because that can mean different things. So what question are you trying to answer? If you want to say we're going to detailed history of the volcano, you might want to collect a lot more. So it's a lot of wandering around.
Yeah.
Taking in the beauty, which I don't mind.
Sure.
And then either setting up an instrument, setting up multiple instruments, or carrying big bags of rocks around.
Sounds heavy.
Yeah, it can be.
So what would a typical day be like? So you wake up in a tent here, you're inside of a crater, are you having breakfast and then heading out? Is it like, you know?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The documentary in Nyargongo was with the BBC, and they had set us up pretty nice with all the stuff we would need. It's great. You just go and you do your science and they take care of everything. And so we had those like dehydrated meals that come in packets. You get like REI or whatever.
Sure.
And I don't know if
freeze-dried kind of stuff, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. And you
whatever,
just
like,
put
yeah.
like hot water in them and let
Sure.
them sit for a while and then eat it. I don't know if you've ever had freeze-dried eggs, like scrambled eggs.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah.
If anyone
Not good.
is listening, never get the eggs.
No.
It's like well known.
It's not going to be what you think it's going to be.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple of good breakfasts, and people then learned that the eggs were disgusting. And slowly, you can think of this as like a crystallization experiment, right? For all of the good stuff leaves first.
Yeah.
And you're left with a high proportion of eggs to everything else. So anyway, that's the start of the day.
So like the last day, all you have to eat is eggs?
I think I came down from the volcano before that happened, so sucks
No
for
wonder
everyone else.
No wonder you got out of there.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, there's only eggs left. Let's go. First thing of the day is fighting over not having eggs.
Right.
Maybe have a coffee, and then you set out as early as you can, and it's easy to do that because you're psyched.
I guess I'm wondering about like, you're wandering through this just crazy terrain, and I'm guessing chances are pretty good you're going places like nobody's ever gone before, like, or at least very few.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is that like? Is it like terrifying? Is it exciting? Is it some of both?
It's some of both. I mean, it's exciting if, obviously you got to know what you're doing when you walk off trail. So if you don't have a clear plan and maybe a guide, don't walk off the trail.
Yeah.
But these are places that are pretty wild. Yeah. So the idea that you put your foot on a surface that no one has ever put their foot on before is pretty wild. Like, I'm actually struggling to believe that I have, even though maybe I have. Just the idea of that is like the world is pretty well studied, Yeah. People have been everywhere, but
right, exactly.
Maybe not right here.
Maybe not right in the active volcano.
Yeah. And some of it is understanding the hazards. And the one that I am most, maybe this stems from my fear of heights, the one that I am maybe the most cautious of is going up to the edge of the crater.
Yeah.
Because not only is that material, it can break apart. It's not necessarily super well held together, but there can be overhangs over the edge of the crater that you cannot see.
Yeah.
So if you go and stand on the edge of this thing that looks like you can stand on there and get a good view, just do not. Because if that thing breaks,
that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. You don't know that you're on an overhang as you're standing on top of it. I get that. Yeah.
And when you're going for the, measuring the gases, you want to be close to the edge.
Yeah.
So you can get those gases that are coming over it. So it's a bit of figuring out how to do that without risking too much.
Yeah. Do you use drones or something like that to scout out terrain, or is it you just,
You absolutely can. Yeah. And those are becoming more and more popular now. They're less expensive, easier to fly. We had a drone when we went to Naimulagira, and there we spent a bunch of time in the crater. So that one was interesting. So that was a very, very different day for me. If you want to talk about like life in the day in the life.
Yeah.
So we woke up we were in Goma, I believe. And then we went to this like UN, United Nations, like airstrip. And they had chartered this UN helicopter. Like one of these big ones that you can like take the doors off of it.
Yeah, like a military style.
Like a big military helicopter. And we had, I think they gave us like UN, like they're the blue helmets, right?
Yeah.
Like we had these UN things, these UN guys with us. So we it's so funny too because they had like a terminal type thing where you'd sit and wait. Yeah, and it was like a small room with like 5 like folding chairs. Mm-hmm. And I remember, so this was in 2017, I believe. And a couple years prior, there was all those issues with the Galaxy Note 7 that had like started on fire in planes.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
The like lithium batteries
yes.
were just catching on fire.
And so there was literally a sign in this like tiny room in Goma in the DR Congo that said, no Galaxy Note 7s
oh my gosh.
were allowed.
Yeah.
Which,
that's your biggest risk around there.
Like even they knew.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we get on this helicopter. We're all stoked. We're doing the documentary, so they mic us up and everything. And we are flying. So they're telling us, there's a lot of rebel activity in the area. So it's, an area of geopolitical strife, as I'm sure you're aware.
Sure.
And Goma's pretty close to the border, like with Rwanda. And so there's a lot of rebel activity for one, trying to get some of these resources that the volcanic landscape provides. And if they see these, helicopters heading towards the volcano, they might know these are people we can, exploit, potentially even kidnap. If you're a rebel group and you want to make world news, a good way to do that would be to kidnap a bunch of people from the West. Because now it's on the BBC. Now it's in the New York Times.
Right. So you're something of a target.
You're a target. Yeah. And so because of that, they're flying low. I can't remember what they called it, but it was like this sort of military type of flying where they're pretty close to the ground more than you normally be and fast.
Does that help your fear of heights or make it worse?
I wasn't really afraid at all. It was just and the doors were open and I'm sitting at the door. I must have had like a seatbelt.
Are you sure you're scared of heights? That seems like it would be an absolutely terrifying thing for somebody scared of heights.
Well, I love roller coasters.
Oh, okay.
And this was just so incredible that it totally overcame the fear.
Yeah.
So we're looking out the side and just talking about what we're seeing, and you're flying over, and you're close to the ground, so it looks even faster. Flying over these treetops. And we land in the crater with this helicopter.
Oh, wow.
Get out, do our walk, march over towards the sort of inner crater where the not active but lava lake is. It comes and goes there.
But it is an active volcano.
It is an active volcano.
Lava lake.
Yeah, and it has a lava lake, but it's not always active.
I see.
So sometimes we'll see Nyiragongo do something, and then Nyamulagira would do something. So we think they're connected underground.
Yeah.
So sometimes the heat will, leave Nyiragongo and maybe get pushed over to Nyamulagira and kick things into gear again. And they're like, okay, we only have a couple of hours here because this is how much time, if the rebels saw us, this is how long it would take them to get here.
Oh, wow.
So I don't remember, it was 2-3 hours, something like that. It wasn't a terribly long amount of time. And it was, it was real danger, but it was definitely emphasized for the cameras in part.
Oh, okay.
It was
playing
real.
It up a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, now that we're here, T-minus, but, and it's this is a military operation.
Yeah.
And so we, land there, they're talking about shots we're going to film, and I'm off picking up rocks.
Yeah.
Because I'm we have a limited amount of time.
Right. Let's
and
not waste any time.
These are beautiful. And so we march over. Some people are setting up instruments along the way. We had someone who flew a drone there and made a 3D map of the crater, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And we're split into kind of a couple of groups. And there's a funny part in the documentary. I think it's hilarious. My mom doesn't think it's that funny. But it's this, they have to have dramatic moments, right? So they have this dramatic moment of we've lost Kayla.
Oh, yeah.
Where is she?
Yeah.
And I was just over, on a small hill, setting up my gas box and collecting rocks.
Yeah, you're doing your science.
And I could see them over there.
Yeah.
But they're we've lost her. Where has she gone?
Yeah.
And my friends, when they saw that, they're like, Kayla, that is very on brand for you.
Yeah.
Just wander off.
Wander off into the volcano.
Into the volcano. No big deal.
Yeah.
So
your mom didn't appreciate this, you're saying?
Yeah, no. My mom did not love. She's like, Kayla, you have to stay with the group. You're so reckless. But the data wasn't actually that great from there, unfortunately, in the end. But
you didn't have much time.
It was worth it for, to try.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know until you get there, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
part of doing field work.
You're listening to Wild World. After another short break, I'll ask Kayla what the scariest experience is that she's ever had while studying volcanoes.
To support this Wild World podcast, please check out Autio. It's an app that gives you amazing stories told by some of the world's best storytellers, such as John Lithgow, Phil Jackson, and Kevin Costner, and it's uniquely curated based on your location. It's a perfect audio travel companion for any road trip or just learning more about a trip you want to take. Click on the link in our show notes for more information.
Welcome back. I'm speaking with Dr. Kayla Iacovino about her work studying volcanoes in Central Africa.
So what is the scariest thing that's happened to you while doing fieldwork?
Oh, well, that would also be in the East African Rift, but in a different place. So in Ethiopia. And this was in, probably 2011. There was a conference going on. So the area is called the Afar Rift, which you may know. It sounds like you know a lot about the region.
Well, that is famous in the study of human evolution because Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, comes from afar. Yeah.
See, I thought I was impressing you with Australopithecus, but I don't know the second name of it.
That's about the extent of what I know about afar. Other than that, it's in, I think, eastern part of Ethiopia. Something like that.
East African Rift. So kind of close to the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which is a very contentious geopolitically area. So there's Eritrean rebels that will come into Ethiopia, kidnap people, kill people.
Yeah.
So we were there for this conference. This was a consortium of the Afar Rift consortium of people studying all the various geology there and the volcanology. And some people from our group, when I was in grad school at the time, were in it. And so I think all of the grad students went down and we were in Addis Ababa, the capital, and we're there for the conference. And then the latter part of the conference was a field trip where we would go in this sort of ring up the rift, so up to the north, through the Afar Rift. We would get to this very famous volcano, very similar to Nyiragongo, called Ursha Ale, which is another one of these things with a massive lava lake and very similar geologic setting. And then we would kind of come back down. You kind of go up into the mountains a little bit, come back down, stop at a famous place called Lalibela, which if you've ever eaten at an Ethiopian restaurant, like 9 times out of 10, there was a picture of Lalibela on the wall.
I've actually been to Lalibela.
Have you?
Yeah. So go ahead. I don't want to derail you, but that's actually one of my favorite places I've ever been anywhere in the world.
It's pretty amazing.
It's incredible.
And then we were to come back to Addis Ababa, the capital, and fly out. So we were, I think, about a day delayed getting onto the road. I can't remember why. So we set off a day late. And, mind you, there are armed guards with us, like machine gun armed guards, because that's what you need to be safe in the field there.
Yeah.
And tourists do go there. It's this, geotourism, extreme tourism thing, which fine. And so we're in like a caravan. I don't know how many, 6 maybe, these like Land Cruiser things. And we're driving up. I can give a quick aside for a funny story that's part of this, if you like.
Please.
So we'll get to the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. But first, one of the worst medical issues that happened to me in the field, which was that I got like sick from the food sick.
Oh, yeah, it's not fun.
And in Ethiopia, people are like, expect to get sick. Like it's, you can't drink the water at all. Don't eat anything that's been washed. So no lettuce.
Right.
Don't brush your teeth with the water. Use bottled. Like it's very, very serious. And we had stopped at a place called Lake Afdira, which is one of these hypersaline lakes, like the Dead Sea.
Very salty.
It's very salty, so you can float on it. Mm-hmm. And so it was the reason that happens, they're originally connected to the ocean, to saltwater.
Yeah.
And then as evaporation occurs, they get cut off from the sea, and evaporation continues, and it's just becoming more and more, less and less water, and so proportionally more and more salt.
Yeah, the water evaporates, but the salt stays behind.
It stays behind, exactly. So I remember a friend of mine's like, we're going to go swimming and float in the water. And he's like, okay, I am not. We're like, why aren't you coming? He's like, you people are crazy. You think I'm going in that water?
Oh.
No way.
Yeah.
Whatever. So we go in the water and we're hanging out and it's fun. Come back, have dinner and go to bed. And that night was one of the worst nights.
Oh, no.
So we had like a bathroom tent.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the bathroom tent,
Yeah.
If not as much as I was in my tent, maybe more.
Oh, no.
It was not fun.
No,
I felt
that's terrible.
horrible.
Yeah.
Went the whole night like that. Woke up in the morning. Well, probably was up. And there was a few of us that were really had to have the same experience.
Yeah. All competing for the bathroom tent, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I'm trying to remember, like, how did I make it to the bathroom tent every time?
Yeah.
Maybe luck.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting there and I'm feeling like crap. And we're sitting around the breakfast table and people are starting to eat and drink coffee. And everyone takes a couple sips of their coffee and doesn't really say anything. And then one person just goes, "Does this coffee taste salty?"
Oh, no.
And everyone, has this realization come over their face like, oh my God.
Where did the water come from?
They've been using the local water to cook our food.
Oh.
And we were like, okay.
The fact that it's salty is the least of your worries at this point.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it was like, okay, now we know why like a third of us are sick. So word to the wise, if you ever go somewhere like this, get a antibiotic called Ciprose for short, or ciprofloxacin. Mm-hmm. If you go see a doctor, tell them you're going to one of these places, they will prescribe it for you. It like nukes your system. Very strong antibiotic, but it's just like a miracle.
Yeah. If you need it, you need it.
And I took it, and in a handful of hours, I was like completely fine.
Oh, wow. That's fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So I forever will be indebted to the creator of Ciprose.
Yes. Thank you, antibiotics.
Yeah. And so it happened to me. That was rough.
Wow. Yeah, that was bad. Could have been worse if you didn't have the Cipro, but
I don't even know what I would have done. We were out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
There was not buildings.
Right.
There was definitely not a hospital or anything like that.
Yeah. Wow.
So, all right. So we had that wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Now I'm better. And we're driving north, heading towards the volcano. This might have been the next day. I'm trying to remember. And we can start to see the volcano rising above the horizon in the distance. And we're trotting along in our caravan, and we see another caravan coming the opposite direction, like in these sand dune fields. And they stop, and our drivers, who are all Ethiopian, and a lot of them didn't speak any English, so we just made do. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of people who would interpret. And so they get out, and they start talking to the drivers of the other car, and we're hanging out. They get back in the car. And I remember it was very, very obvious that the demeanor of our driver had completely changed.
Oh.
He had been kind of happy and goofy, and he was not at this point.
Uh-oh.
He was like silent.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just driving along, and everyone sees that this is just, there's something in the air.
Something has happened.
Something has happened. As we're starting to talk to each other, like, what do you think they said to him? Like, what is going on? And, he can't tell us, first of all, because he doesn't speak English.
Right.
But he's saying enough with his body language and silence. We know something bad is happening. So we're still going to go in towards the volcano, and all of a sudden we start veering off to the left. And we're not really going towards the volcano anymore. And so we're like, okay, it doesn't look like we're going to Urta Ale. We were supposed to be sleeping on the crater rim that night. And then we were going to experience it, see it, and head out the next day. So we're driving away from the volcano, and we stop in this town. And when I say town, I mean like there's one like brick and mortar building, and then a bunch of these traditional like huts that people were living in. And the building was some philanthropic group came and built like a school for the kids there.
Yeah.
But there's not
much.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the desert. And so we all get out of the cars, and we're sitting on the ground lined up outside of this school and wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
And the leader of the trip, who was a professor of a university in England, he comes up and he explains what's happening. And there had been, the night prior, there had been an attack on the volcano.
Oh, wow.
So sort of what I mentioned before about, if you're a rebel group, you're coming in, you're kidnapping people, but the biggest prize will be people from the West, people from Germany and England and South America, United States. And some Eritrean rebels had come with machine guns, got to the top of the volcano, killed all of the Ethiopian guards.
Oh, my God.
Killed some of the Western tourists that were there. was a group of them, and kidnapped some others and took them back to Eritrea.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know how long some of those people were there. I believe some people got away and were able to make it back to the capital.
Wow.
But a lot of people were taken back to Eritrea. Some of them were then killed, and some of them eventually got back and got home.
Oh, what an absolute horrific nightmare.
Absolutely a nightmare. And it hadn't dawned on me at this point because there was a lot going on through my head. And the leader of our group says, so I believe we were the target.
Oh, my gosh.
If you recall, we set off about a day late.
Wow.
On the field trip. And he recalled that on the website for the conference, they had published a field trip schedule.
Oh, so people could figure out where you were going and when you were going to be there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so terrifying.
Terrifying.
And then these other people happened to be there? It was a tourist group that was there at the time. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And it's, the amount of guilt, too, of thinking this happened to these people because of something that, that was a mistake to publish that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. Wow. That's scary. I mean, you guys were lucky that you found out about it in advance and that you were delayed by a day, but how horrible.
Yeah.
So did that experience, how did that affect you in the longer term? Like, do you do things differently? Are there certain places you won't go or risks you won't take now?
I don't know that there would actually be certainly depending on the situations, there would be places I wouldn't go. But honestly, it's kind of rare if I think that it's safe.
Yeah.
And so it definitely, I was pretty young at the time. Not that I'm not still naive, but definitely a lot more naive about that kind of thing when I was that age. And it really opened my eyes to what can actually happen. When you're in your 20s and early 20s, you're like, well, this happens to other people.
Right.
But it would never happen to me. You just can't believe that it could happen to you.
Yeah.
And knowing that it could was big, and understanding what the actual risks are and how you mitigate those risks. So one of the things would be to not advertise where you're going to be and when.
Yep.
Understanding, are the political tensions currently really bad? Is there something going on in the country? Using resources from places like the State Department, which used to have very thorough guidance on what countries are dangerous.
Yeah.
And local guidance. And if you're going with a group, vetting what they have done. So when we went to the DR Congo, the BBC provided me with a whole packet of information from a recce where they went on a reconnaissance trip there. Mm-hmm. And I was able to look through it and say, okay, I believe they've done a thorough job and they checked all these boxes. So when I was in the DR Congo, I felt very safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Ethiopia was a lot more dangerous probably in general, but plus just the fact that I didn't even know what risks were really there, let alone how to mitigate them at the time.
In our final segment, we'll hear about how Kayla Iacovino became a scientist who climbs into volcanoes, and what Star Trek had to do with it.
To support this Wild World podcast, please check out Autio. It's an app that gives you amazing stories told by some of the world's best storytellers, such as John Lithgow, Phil Jackson, and Kevin Costner, and it's uniquely curated based on your location. It's a perfect audio travel companion for any road trip or just learning more about a trip you want to take. Click on the link in our show notes for more information.
Welcome back. My guest is volcanologist Dr. Kayla Iacovino.
I think it's interesting that we're talking about risk, and clearly what you're describing is real risk that, unfortunately you've seen how it can be risky to other folks. But, for people outside your field, like, if you describe what you're doing, I mean, you're literally climbing into active volcanoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that the risks that we're talking about are actually risks from people.
Absolutely.
And not the risks of the volcano itself. How do you in general think about risk? Like, do you consider what you do to be risky? I think most people from the outside looking in might say, oh my gosh, you do this so risky thing. But, do you feel like what you're doing when you're going out and doing field work is generally risky?
I mean, I think, you said it, that the people are absolutely the riskiest part of all of this, and followed maybe by the wildlife. And depending on the volcano, it's more or less risky. I mean, even if you look at really high-risk volcanoes, the number of people, like number of volcanologists or geoscientists that have died there is relatively small. So it's not without risk, but there are geology, even volcanology, which is this very active process. Geology exists on a timescale different from our own. So the things that are happening, even at very active volcanoes, there's a much more of a lag time between big events. You could go to a bad neighborhood and you're at risk in any moment that you're there.
Yeah. Or even just being in a car accident on the way there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing that helps. If you're going to a place that's a safe country and you're not as worried about the risks of just being in that physical place, I think that's honestly the biggest risk. The other thing is that if it's an active volcano, working with, again, where it's all about working with the locals. So if there's a local observatory or local scientists, I worked on a volcano or a few volcanoes we traveled around in northern Chile. And there was one that was particularly active, and we made sure to liaise with the observatory scientists there. Mm-hmm. And they knew, we would check in with them every day or two and say, how's the volcano? And if they said there was an increased risk, then we knew to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have all the instrumentation, they can see what's going on.
And so it sounds like what you're saying is like, yes, there are risks, but you do everything that you can to try to understand and to minimize the risks that you're taking, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing is, I hate to sound trite, but like, don't do something stupid.
Yeah.
We're not there to look cool. I like to tell, when I talk to students in particular, they sometimes get excited about the risk, and dying on a volcano is not a cool way to die.
No.
It's not a cool way to die.
Yeah.
And some people would be like, I don't know, it seems pretty cool. It is. You do not want to die in a volcano.
No.
So if it's not worth it, it's not worth it.
Absolutely. So, did you always want to study volcanoes? Did you grow up imagining that you would be traveling around the world, going and visiting volcanoes? I mean, you grew up in Arizona, right?
I did, yeah.
Some cool geology, but not a lot of volcanoes.
Not active.
Not any active. That's right. Yeah.
No, not at all. In fact, growing up in Arizona, and I think this is true for a lot of places, geology wasn't a science, or earth science wasn't something that was given much thought. So when I was in high school, we had an earth science class, but I think from freshman to senior, it was like earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics. And there was this sort of idea that they were of increasing difficulty and sort of therefore maybe increasing importance, which obviously I don't agree with. And so I fancied myself one of the smart kids. Mm-hmm. So I was allowed to just skip earth science and go right to biology.
Really?
Yeah. And also the earth science teacher was notorious for being kind of a wacko, and you didn't learn very much in that class.
Oh, I see.
So that wasn't so bad. But yeah, earth science wasn't something I thought you could have a career. I just never thought about it.
Yeah.
If someone had asked me, can you have a career in earth science? I would be like, I guess. Literally just never crossed my mind. I knew I loved science, and I knew I loved filmmaking.
Okay.
So as a kid, I was like making videos with my friends on like VHS with a big chunky VHS camcorder.
Yeah.
And then, the what are they called? The little high 8 tapes or whatever. And they got smaller. And I loved Star Trek.
Okay, yeah.
Grew up watching Star Trek, still watch Star Trek.
Yep.
And the thing that everyone gets something different out of Star Trek, all the different people who are fans. The thing I got out of it was the sense of exploration, knowledge seeking for the sake of building our own knowledge.
Yeah.
So not following some monetary thing or, imperialism. It's just we want to learn about each other. We want to learn about the universe.
Curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity in a scientific, rigorous way.
Right.
And then you apply it, and it's just cool. And so those were my two loves, and I was trying to figure out what to do when I got to college. I definitely grew up in a family in an area where going to college was obvious. It was the thing you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So I was definitely privileged in that way that it was understood I would go to college. If I didn't want to, you know, I'm sure my parents would have supported me. But again,
it was expected.
I didn't question it. I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to college. So I went in as an undeclared major and floated around for a bit. I did a semester in film school at USC, California, and then started my undergrad at ASU, Arizona State, and floated around for a bit, took some film courses. And then they opened this new major, a whole new school at Arizona State called the School of Earth and Space Exploration.
Oh, yeah.
And actually the guy who's now my husband is the one who found out about it. He comes and tells me about this thing. And we're looking at each other like, oh, he's like, I'm switching my major to this, like right now. Like, I'm going to go talk to them. And I was like, this is basically like, let's go be astronauts.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is my opportunity to combine my two loves, like doing science, but also in this very sort of sexy way.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm in. I loved space science. So I was like, I am so in. So we both switched our majors. I'm so glad that I did. Now the geology and astronomy departments there have sort of become this. Mm-hmm. And being so much geology in Arizona, we had great geology professors and great field sites we could go out to. And I was choosing between this astronomy or geology because I thought astronomy was it. You know, I want to go study other planets.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized that modern astronomy, it's great, but I'm a very tactile person.
Yeah.
Like I need to pick up a rock, smell it, you know, hike out to it.
Yeah, it's hard to touch the stars.
Exactly. But you know, so it's basically, you know, electrons on a computer screen. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do. You sit in front of a computer screen, your data comes down and you deal with your data. And I was just like, this is awesome. They're learning stuff, but I would be bored.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's about more than just the questions. It's also about the way you answer them, and the lifestyle of doing the research, right?
Yeah, I have to be inside of it. Like I'm the level of tactile that when I'm walking around art museums, I sometimes get yelled at for getting too close to the paintings because they're like, "Ma'am, this is worth $100 million. Please do not breathe on it."
Right.
So that's why I fell in love with geology. And then from there was a guy who became like a very important mentor to me for my whole career, put out a email to the whole department for a job, student researcher, that the title of the email was "Get Paid to Melt Rocks."
Wow.
And I was like, I once again, me jumping at opportunity, I was like, I am there.
Yeah.
So I applied, and I guess he saw something in me because he hired me, worked in that lab as an experimental lab which is what I do now. We use these equipment that can go to high pressures and temperatures. So we're simulating what's actually happened in these magma chambers underground. So how do rocks at the surface, you know, where did they come from? And I learned a lot there. And from there, we did a lot of work that was directly related to volcanism. And that just shot me and up into the volcano realm. And just before I graduated, this guy named Clive Oppenheimer from the University of Cambridge came to, I don't even know how he got hooked up with our lab. It came to do some kind of collaboration and brought these samples from Antarctica. And I was also obsessed with Antarctica because my first geology professor had been there and I saw these pictures and it was like this great frontier of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I work on these Antarctic rocks? And so I did.
Wow.
And then, you know, I was really excited about the project and I emailed this guy, Clive, and was like, hey, I'm really interested in doing a PhD.
Yeah.
And he was like, sure.
Wow.
And, you know, apply. And he helped me like work out a project. And I applied there, somehow got accepted, and that's how I got to Antarctica. And then just from there, with his research group, they go all over the world. That's what he does. He goes from volcano to volcano measuring the gases. So it's a lot of luck.
Yeah, there's luck, and then there's also, you know, seeing those opportunities and grabbing them and
Absolutely.
Taking full advantage of them.
Yeah.
Well, Kayla Iacovino, thank you so much for sharing all of these incredible experiences that you've had and the awesome research that you do.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a blast.
To learn more about Kayla Iacovino's research on volcanoes, visit her website, KaylaIacovino.com. That's KaylaIacovino.com. We'll also have a link to it in the show notes and on our website, wildworldshow.com, where we'll also have some pictures of Kayla and the incredible places that she's worked. Seriously, you've got to see this. Did you know Wild World has a merch shop? You can get a t-shirt, coffee mug, or hat to show your support of the podcast. There's a link to it on our website. Wild World is produced by 3Wire Creative. That's it for this episode. I'm Scott Solomon. Join me next time as we explore another part of our wild world.